Hey, so this is going to be a beginning of a series on how to make pizza. And for this particular dough, I'm going to use my sourdough starter, which just turned 7 years old. Um, you can absolutely use yeast. In fact, this really won't apply to you until, if you're not using sourdough starter, this video really won't apply to you until we actually get into the dough making process. But I have sourdough. I love the way it tastes. I love what it does for a dough. So I'm going to use mine. So mine lives in the fridge just because if it lives on the countertop, you have to feed it, pretty much every single day, and you go through a ton of flour, and it's not fun. But I'm gonna get through. I'm gonna do a sourdough video for one of my newer friends. Her name is Sil. She requested kind of an in-depth sourdough starter video, so that will come in the future. Um, let's just get started here. So this is my starter. Like I said, I keep very little in here just because when I do have to feed it, I don't have to add a ton of flour. I need to keep a big jar. It keeps a little amount of space. But so this is coming out of the fridge. So when a starter lives in the fridge, putting it in the fridge, putting any type of leavener in the fridge, it drastically slows down the activity of the yeast. So when it's been living in the fridge, you want to take it out and you want to feed it in order to, really get it active, get that yeast working so that it's actually able to leaven your dough. Like if you just put, a cold starter that's been sitting in the fridge for a month and just put it in a dough, you would not get the rise that you want. So what I recommend doing, if you are using a sourdough starter, so what you want to do is you want to spend a few days feeding it in order to get it active, and you want to feed it in a way that so by the final feeding, like right before you're about to actually make it into the dough, you have the exact amount of weight of sourdough that you want to use. And let's just say, for example's sake, it's 57 grams of starter you want to use. So you want to take it. So this is going to be, and don't try to use this with a starter that you started like a few days ago. I mean, a starter takes it takes a, I want to say it takes a few weeks to get going. Um, it's been a long time since I made that one, so I can't remember when it really took off. But I can get this thing kind of up and going in a couple days. But let's just assume that you're going to spend 3 days getting the starter to where it needs to be in terms of yeast activity. And then on the fourth day, we're going to feed it yet again, but we're going to also use it then to kind of catch it at its peak rise and use it in the dough and go from there. So let's just say that your final weight of sourdough that you need to make your dough, and you can find like pizza calculators online that will kind of tell you, what hydration you want, which kind of hydration you want, and like how many grams of flour, how many grams of water, and how many grams of starter you would want to use to hit that proper hydration level. And it also takes into account how many dough balls you want to make, and what size of the dough ball that you want. Which I typically aim from usually about, I don't know, like 270, 280. If I were new to making pizza, I'd recommend you kind of start at like 290, 300, just because there's a little wider margin for error. Um, but I typically like to keep it around 270, which when you stretch it out nicely, it should make you about, 10 to 12-inch pizza, depending on, how far you take it, how thin you make it. But so anywho, so we're going to start with kind of like the timeline. And again, we're keeping in mind that the final dough weight we want is 57 grams of starter to put into the dough. So it's day one. You take your sourdough out of the fridge, and this is also a good time to just empty out all the starter, feed it, clean the jar out, put it back in the fridge. But again, let's not go there right now, even though I just went there. So anyways, so day one, you want to measure out 2 grams of this, 2 grams of water, 2 grams of flour, mix it together in a small bowl, cover it, let it sit for 24 hours. So then after 24 hours, you'll have 6 grams of total dough weight in there, sourdough starter in there. So then let's say you got your 6 grams of starter. It's been waiting 24 hours. You uncover it. Then I'm going to add 3 grams of water, 3 grams of flour. People always will like to say that you have to use equal parts. So like if you have like 6 grams of starter, you have to add 6 grams of flour and 6 grams of water. I think that's kind of bullshit. I've gotten away with not doing that. And it's worked out just fine for me. So, and then let's see. So that leaves you with 9 grams. So then, sorry. So you uncover that after a day. Then you have 6 grams of starter. Add 3 grams of water, 3 grams of flour. Mix it up. Cover it up for another 24 hours. So then we come to day 3. So then your total dough weight is 9 grams of starter. And then here I'm going to add 9 grams of water, 9 grams of flour. It just kind of makes the math easier when you're trying to get to your final dough weight of 57 grams. So on the third day, you take your 9 grams of starter, you mix it with 9 grams of water, 9 grams of flour, mix it up. Again, cover it up, let it sit for 24 hours, and that leaves you with the final sourdough weight of 27 grams. And so after that third day, the fourth day, your shit should be fucking good to go. It should be nice and active. It should be ready to, feast on that flour and make you some delicious pizza dough. So on the fourth day is when you are going to take your starter, which at this point is 27 grams. And again, like I said earlier, we're just for the sake of example, we're saying we want 57 grams of sourdough starter for our dough. And again, if you are using yeast, though, you will have to adjust the recipe down the line when you actually start to make the dough. Because if you're not using starter and using yeast, you have to keep in mind that the sourdough starter is equal parts flour and water. And if you're not using a starter, then obviously you have to adjust to account for the change in hydration from using yeast instead of more flour and water. So it's the day you want to make the dough. So you got your 27 grams of starter. I'm going to add 15 grams of flour, 15 grams of water, mix it up, cover it. That will leave us at 57 grams of sourdough starter, the final weight that we want for our dough. So again, mix that up, cover it, but this time you kind of want to capture it at the height of its rise. It should be nice and bubbly. It should be about double in size, and you kind of want to catch it right before it starts to fall, because that's when it's at its peak, and that's when you want to add to the dough so that you can really get the best leaven you possibly can out of your sourdough. So we're going to cut to the next part of the video soon, and then I'm going to actually start showing you how to make the dough itself. All right, welcome back. It is 4 hours later. So this is what this looks like now. It has double in size. I was originally going to plan on just like not doing this tonight because I was getting kind of tired, but then I caught a second wind. We'll pop open a Kieran, and now I'm going to get the process started. So first things first is going to be like a 65 hydration dough, which is kind of on the higher things for the higher hydration for what I typically do. I usually kind of go lower 60s, like 61, 62, and I know that these small numbers seem negligible, but they actually do make a pretty big difference. But that's just kind of the way I do it. So first things first, I'm just going to add all of my starter, my water, and yeah, that's it. Kind of loosen it up and get ready to take the flour. I'm also going to throw a little olive oil in there. That's kind of what's going to bring it up to 65%, but which is kind of controversial. Well, it's not controversial. Not everyone does it, but I like to do it sometimes because I just kind of think it's fun and just kind of feels like the right thing to do, All right, so let's measure this shit. So we should, if my math was correct when I was kind of activating the starter over the past 3 days. It should come out to 48 grams. So we'll see how good I was. I think I'm starting to figure out editing. You probably don't hear this, um, I kind of learned to cut out all the bullshit that you really don't want to see or hear. It's weird cooking with no music. Hold on, fuck it. So this should be 48 grams. And by the way, this recipe is going to make, I believe it is 275 gram dough balls, which is good for about, a good 12-inch pizza. You can stretch it to 14 if you really know what you're doing. 36? Well, I fucked that up somewhere. 36? How did that happen? Whatever. Still a nice active yeast, and it might take a little longer to do, but that's fine. There's plenty of yeast in here to leaven. I mean, technically any amount of possible dough. Yeast is self-regulating. As long as there's food, it's going to multiply. So let's get that shit cleaned up, because a dry doughy bowl is an absolute fucking nightmare. So really, I'm just gonna make up the difference of this in equal parts water and flour, because the sourdough starter itself is equal parts flour and water. Um, it just keeps things easier to get your hydration percentage down that way. But I don't know if you can see. Can I zoom in? I just lift the bowl up. You see like those little bubbles in there? You can kind of like, you can tell it's definitely eating some food right now, spelling some gas. But yeah, I'm gonna make up the difference. So this is 36 grams. So I'm gonna add 6 grams of water and 6 grams of flour. Actually, I'm just going to add it when I do the final, but water's going in anyways. So instead of 600 grams of water, now I need 606. So let's zero that out. $604, $608. Fuck you. Whatever, we'll deal with it. Higher hydration pizza doughs, like once you get to like the 68%, they get a little more difficult to work with, especially for beginners. So if you are a beginner, I would recommend kind of scaling back your recipe to like kind of like a 61% hydration dough. And hydration percentage is basically just the amount of the water over the amount of the flour. Um, and I kind of prefer low hydration pizza doughs anyway, so kind of it's a win-win. So then I'm going to add an indiscriminate amount of olive oil. Just one of those things, like it just kind of measure it with your heart. Let's throw, so it's like 63.6% hydration right now. Well, actually, with that, I had water is probably 64, so I'll probably just put like 10 grams of this in. It's kind of one of those things where you know if it's there, like you won't know, but if it's not there, you'll be like, what? Something's definitely missing. So I am just going to mix up all this shit together just so I can get ready to add the flour and salt. And this process would be the exact same thing if you just used like a quarter teaspoon of dry active yeast instead of the sourdough starter. But you still have to adjust accordingly because you're not using the starter, which has water and flour. You're just using yeast, so you'd have to adjust your flour and water measurements. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes into baking, and like you'll definitely fuck up so many shit. So like so many recipes doing it, but like it's that's just part of the bread learning process, you know. Hopefully, you know, I will put a picture up on this video of my first ever attempt at a loaf of sourdough. It was man, it looked like a loaf of hardtack. It was just overcooked and burnt on both ends. But then the second one got real fucking good. So you know what? Let's just mix this up. You know, wash your hands if you haven't. If you don't wash your hands before you cook or bake, you're a fucking animal. Just mix that up. Make sure you get all that shit off the sides. Still looking good. All right, so that's as you know mix is gonna get. You know, fucking olive oil. So, all right, now we're gonna measure out 959 grams of flour. Typically, I would use, you know, typically I use bread flour just because I think it works better for because of the higher protein content. Just kind of makes better, you know, gluten development. Um, and kind of gives you that more, you know, stretchy pull to it that I kind of like in pizza. Um, or I'll use 00 on occasion. Uh, but honestly, it's all pretty fucking similar, so I wouldn't stress out too much about it. Just use a white fucking flour. So we're gonna add 953 grams of flour. I'm just gonna use the rest of the bread flour that I do have. So that was 383. So close. Fuck, too much. Always happens. Wait, 959. Yeah, good enough. 960 it is. And pretty standard practice for salt content in pizza dough is 2% of the flour. So I'm going to take the 959 grams of flour. Don't forget the amount of flour in the starter, which was 24. So 959 plus 24 equals 983. So we will do 1% of that is 9.83 grams. Double that. Now we're just going to call it 19 grams. Which is a lot of salt when you see it measured out, but it's, you know, 6 dough balls and they're pretty big dough balls. Where's my. Alright, done with this. So if you have a KitchenAid mixer, you can absolutely totally do it in here. And that'll just make things a lot easier. But I just think it's so fun to kind of like really feel the transition in your hands of how the dough changes from going from like these raw ingredients to just something that's so like cohesive and has so much like complexity to it. I think it's just, and especially when you're learning, it really helps. Like you can kind of like, you know, touch doughs and know what stages they're at, whether they're overproofed, underproofed, whether they need more kneading, you know, things like that, whether they're too wet, too dry. And plus, it's just kind of fun, just fucking getting your hands in some dough. You know, it's a good way to take the stress out of the day. You know. Note to self: get more bread flour. Let's put this down. It's so close to that being sauerkraut. 20 grams of salt. Not too much. 20 grams of salt. And so sourdough by nature is a lot more slow acting than like instant yeast. Like an instant yeast would, you'd mix this, you'd knead it, and like it would double in size in like honestly like 45 minutes. Probably even sooner because it's got not really too much fat in it to kind of prevent it from rising too fast. Because oil kind of makes it tougher for the yeast to develop gluten. So let's see, salt in. But with this, like at room temperature, I would want to do it for. I would want to like do the bulk ferment. Like I was talking about with yeast, you would just cover it after you kneaded it, let it sit for an hour, double, and then kind of go on to the secondary ferment, which I will get to later. But with sourdough room temperature, I mean, typically, um, I probably do spend probably 45 minutes, 1 hour. I probably do like a two, two and a half, almost 3 hours sometimes primary ferment, just kind of depending on how much starter is in there, how active it is. That's one of those things that comes back to feel. But obviously, I am not. It is. Let's see what it's 9:45 right now p.m. and I have no intention of staying up to midnight dealing with this shit. So, but what's great about pizza doughs for the primary ferments is that you can do the kneading, cover it up, and put it in the fridge overnight, and just let it kind of do its thing in there for you know overnight. I'll probably get back from work tomorrow and kind of like tend to this around I don't know 4 or 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whenever I get out, and then I'll go to the secondary ferment. So first, let's mix the dough up. I'll kind of show you how you want to knead it out, and kind of like what the like kind of like what you want to look for when you know the dough is done and sufficiently kneaded. Because since you're not doing the so when I do like the room temp ferment, which I mentioned takes like anywhere from like 2 to 3 hours, every like 30 45 minutes I come in and like I take the dough and I give it a couple folds over itself, and then I let it rest for another 45 minutes, do it again, do it again. That really helps to build gluten structure. Putting it in the fridge doesn't develop as much gluten structure as that, I don't think. um, so I want to make sure I really need it really well now. And I'll cut throughout this to make this video not an hour. All my videos that I put out are just so long. I spend so much time just talking, and I'm so bad at editing, but I'll get there, I promise. I should have started out with I don't know what I'm thinking. I never do this. I should have started out with the end of a wooden spoon and a spatula. I think those are the best. You know what? For the sake of viewership, I am going to show you, I think, the best way to um, mix dough before you're ready to turn it out and knead it out. And make sure the surface that you're working on is clean. That goes without say. Wood works great. That's right. Yeah, wood works great. I mean, marble if you're some fancy pants. Really, any clean surface that you would not mind putting food on. Not like a freshly mopped floor or something weird like that. All right. Where the fuck is my wooden spoon? There's that little devil. This guy is so old; it's just like carved out perfectly. So it's just great, like getting ends and soft spots and shit. It's incredible. You can just tell by the color how well used that shit is. I love it. Well, also, this is the best spatula in the world. It's inexpensive. You get it at like restaurant. Probably get it on Amazon actually, but this is pretty much like the standard in restaurants. So I usually use the end of a wooden spoon. It's a lot easier when you know it's wetter at first, and then you just kind of do this until it's kind of tough to do, and you can kind of get it with your hands and start working it. Don't add any flour to the work surface. This is a lower hydration dough. So you will work it to the point where it won't stick to anything. And I made it. The hydration I made it for a reason. Don't some of the worst breads are always overfloured. All right, so let's see a nice little so clean it is now. Beautiful. All right, so let's turn this bad boy out. Make sure your shit's clean. Pretty sure this is clean. I usually keep this area pretty clean. I think I gave it a good old vinegar spritz not too long ago. Like today, or like an hour or two ago, not like a week ago. As much as you can. Kind of use some dough to pick out the scraps. Get as much as you can. And then honestly, I know it sucks. Your hands are dirty. You just want to get into the dough, but just clean this fucking bowl. Clean it right fucking now. Use hot ass fucking water. Because the longer you wait, the more difficult this is to clean. Like if you're just like a big dishwasher person, like I mean, I don't think a dishwasher would be able to handle this. Well, I don't know. I haven't owned a dishwasher my whole adult life, so they might have gotten pretty good. All right, so everything up until now, whether you're using sourdough starter or yeast, is the same exact thing. Um, with the exception of actually, of course, of dealing with sourdough starter. Like if you wanted to make pizza dough, for tomorrow, you gotta get your sourdough starter prepped. Well, unless you constantly keep room temperature sourdough starter out, which God bless you feeding that thing every day. But typically, that's like a 3-day process, kind of getting it, nice and active and ready. So let's get ready to knead. And dough is one of those things that can like sense fear. You want to be assertive. You want to be confident. Like you want to do quick, confident moves. You want to let that dough know who's boss. And it's gonna feel a little wet at first. That's all right. It's okay. Well, wetness never hurt anyone. And the more you work it, the drier it will get. And your hands, yeah, they're gonna be a little dirty right now, but just trust me. Keep fucking working it. Just keep working it, baby. So I'll probably cut through this and kind of show the progress as I go. Let's see. I'll try to keep a general timeline of how long it's taking me to do this. And also, what you can do too, if it's some of that dough just kind of getting away from you, use a bench scraper. Bring that shit all back together. Keep working. Keep working. You can also do the slap and fold method. Kind of pull it down, stretch the sides out, flip it over, pick it up from the other way. Fold it over. Pick it up from the middle. Damn. Stretch it over. See what I'm doing here? This is a technique you'd use with like really high hydration doughs. Well, really, I mean, if you're doing a super high hydration dough, use a dough lug. But I get it. It's kind of fun to work with a really high hydration dough if you're a fan of making bread. Let's get it working a little more. And between the olive oil and the water, I think I might have put the hydration around 66, 67. Oh shit, this camera's probably getting so rocked. Let's readjust a little. Let's go up. Yeah, sorry, I didn't I didn't realize I was absolutely rocking the the camera at this table while I was eating that shit out. So hopefully this is better. So back to the slap and fold. Slap and kind of stretch the sides out, roll it over. Pick it up by the middle. That's the slap and fold. And that'll keep your hands a little cleaner too. But as you can see now, do you see how this dough is? It's kind of, it's not, it's still sticky, but it's not as sticky. You can tell it's kind of a little smoother. It's starting to come together. The flour's starting to hydrate. I mean, you can feel it in your hands. It's one of those great pleasures in life is really feeling a dough come together, you know? Well, I hope you know. And if you don't know, it's a beautiful feeling that everyone is capable of finding out. And they absolutely should. I like $40 like indestructible Casio watch on Amazon. I am gonna drop a hard affiliate link for that bad boy. What an absolute icon! You're welcome for the free plug, Casio. See, and also notice too, there's not as much dough sticking to the board. Let's kind of work it this way. This way is a little bit more effective of kind of like utilizing your strength to knead the dough as opposed to that slap and fold, which is more of a technique for kneading the dough, just kind of by being able to handle it easier, not just be like a sticky mess. Like if I was doing this and it was still a shaggy dough. But you see how much smoother this is, how much more nicer it is to roll. You can see it stretching a lot more. Let's do one last scrape here. So I've been doing this for 10 minutes. But I want to make sure I do this well because I'm gonna put this in the fridge for an overnight ferment. I'm not gonna be fucking dealing with this shit all night. Or you know what? Maybe I will. Who knows? After I show you how to store the bowl, whether you're putting it in the fridge or doing the bulk ferment at room temperature, I will make a decision on whether I'm going to stay up. No, I'm going to put this in the fridge because after you finish the bulk ferment, I would have to take it out. I'd have to weigh the dough. I'd have to divide the total weight of the dough by the 6 dough balls I want, which would, what was that number I said? It was like 270-ish, somewhere around there. And then I'd have to take all of those 6 dough balls, and I would have to kind of not really knead them, but like imagine this was like something that was ready to be formed into a dough ball for the secondary ferment. It's just kind of like, this is not the technique and this is not how you do it, but yeah, I'm making like 6 of these. Then I have to put that in individual plastic bags. I'd put 2 in the fridge and the rest in the freezer because these things freeze so well, man. Dough is such a good freezer. It's beautiful. So I'm probably just gonna put it in the fridge and deal with it tomorrow. Which is a totally viable option. It's a great option. I'd say most pizzas of this is a pretty all-purpose dough, but I'd say most pizza places that are good are probably doing their primary bulk ferment in the fridge overnight. Which is fine, but they're not all using that sourdough starter that I am. That's got all that nice tang, which is really good. But I don't know. They're both delicious. But like I always say, a longer, colder ferment is better than a hot, short one. See how supple that's looking? Looking kind of nice. Still a little dimpled. But like, it's like, you know what? Some of that might be wax from when I put my board wax on here a couple of days ago. I hope not. Just gonna do a little vinegar spritz and make sure. Clean as you go. Yeah, you can tell this butcher block's seen some shit. But it's a perfect fit. Perfect utility. Alright, scoop up the dough. And again, even I don't care how much nicer and less sticky it is, you still gotta treat the dough, you gotta be confident, you gotta be assertive. You have to move with a purpose. So now I'm just gonna kind of fucking give it its fucking final bash down, beat down. That shouldn't be on my neck. See, there's no sticking whatsoever. It just feels so soft and smooth and stretchy. That's that feeling I'm talking about. Like right fucking. And then after you let it sit for a while and rise, and then all of the flour fully hydrates and it gets super smooth. And slapping some dough. How fun is that, right? All right, but so let's see how much. This is going to show us how to do it. So you take a little piece of dough. You kind of want to stretch it. You don't want to fucking just, be a brute about it. You want to kind of be, have some tact to it. You kind of want to be able to see. I kind of can you see that? Like you can kind of see through it without it tearing, and that's kind of how you know it's ready. So our pizza dough is ready. If you had made this with real yeast, you could let this double, and if you put it in like a turned off oven or a warm spot, this shit would double in like 30 minutes if you put like like over a teaspoon of instant yeast in there, and then you could punch it down, shape it, let it sit for 20 minutes, and you could roll it out there. It'd be a shitty dough. It just would have no desirable characteristics whatsoever. But it could be done. So whether you're using a sourdough starter or using that quarter teaspoon of instant yeast in this recipe, you are going to oil a bowl. That'll be all right. That'll be all right. We're gonna give it a little bit of oil. We're gonna treat it a little better and give it some of the Frankies. Don't be shy. Don't be shy with the olive oil. All right, so let's put that right there. I'm just gonna try to kind of develop some surface tension. Kind of ensure there's even. It's just. There was a point in time where I knew why this was important. For the secondary rise, it's certainly important for structure. That is an eyelash. Let's go, baby. See what comes true. Cool little trick thing you can do with a bench scraper is go like this too. You go straight under. You even pull it like that. Is this bowl gonna handle it? You know what? We're gonna find out. Let's see. But now let's put it down a little. Scrape it up. Ooh, that bowl worries me, man. But I'm gonna put it seam side up at first, even though there's very little seam, which is we done good. That's beautiful. Isn't that so pretty? So put it on the pretty side down first in the oil. Give it all. Let's give it all lube up. And then work it in there. And then it's a long ferment time, and I love throwing a plate on there, reducing the waste, doing my part, and also saving, money on saran wrap because that shit's expensive, like the actual stuff that works. But it's going to be there in the fridge for a while. I want to keep as much air in there as possible. I want this to I don't want this to lose any moisture. My hands are still a little wet from washing my hands. Rim that bowl. Give that a rim job, because putting a little water makes saran wrap stick a lot fucking better. This is tugging the line of width. We're gonna make it. Saran wrap used to be made with a different chemical. That's why it used to work so much better. I'm kind of willing to sacrifice the consequences to bring that plastic wrap back. You know what? With the amount of plastic wrap I use, I really should get like a commercial size one. Make like a shelf for it up there. Oh yeah, maybe we should use a little bigger. My next biggest bowl is a little too big. I need a size between this bowl and my next bigger bowl. But so here, okay. So anywho, either way, whether you use instant yeast or you use sourdough starter, and you got to this point, you're doing a cold primary bulk ferment, which is like the main first rise, and you're doing it in the fridge. This process doesn't change at all. I'm just gonna pop this in the fridge. So this is going in the fridge for fucking 12 hours, 18 hours, 24 hours. Who gives a shit? But at least overnight, at least 6-8 hours. But I would let this go for. I'm probably gonna let this go around probably 10 hours, or I don't know. Maybe I'll get caught up in some shit tomorrow night, and maybe I will end up making it. Tomorrow night is Friday. Maybe I'll end up taking it out of the fridge on Saturday. Who knows? Maybe something happens. But anywho, this is going in the fridge for a period longer than 6 hours, and under. Honestly, I guess a few days, I reckon. The sourdough starter, I don't know. Maybe that's an experiment for another day. Welcome back to the pizza dough. So this is the dough. It is 6:15 p.m. right now. So I think I threw this in the fridge last night at around 9, 10 p.m. or something. So it's been roughly 20 hours in the fridge, cold rise, which is perfectly adequate, whether you're using sourdough starter or just instant yeast. So first thing is first. I think I was aiming for I was aiming for 6 dough balls to be around 270-ish grams each. I don't want to go back and look at the video and spend all that time going back through it just to look at exactly how much grams the dough ball weighs when I can just take the scale out, take the dough out, zero it out, let's weigh it, 1582. So we will take 1582, divide it by 6, and we get, so we have 263 and 2/3 grams dough balls. So I'm going to try to shoot for 265, some maybe a little under, some maybe over. We'll see, but that's plenty. If you're newer to working with dough, you kind of want to aim on the upper end. I'd probably shoot for like probably 290, 300 grams, just because it's you're gonna have you're gonna have a wider margin for error. And it's with when you're really using the minimum amount of dough to stretch it to 12 inches. It's going to be easier for more experienced hands. If you're new at this and you're kind of working out the dough into the round shape, it's going to be a little trickier for you to do versus if you had a little more dough. But I'm pretty good at making pizza. I've been making pizza for a long time. I've made lots of pizzas in my life, so 263 grams is totally fine for me. So we're going to cut this into 6 different pieces, and we're going to try to get each to approximately 263 and 2/3 grams each. So we are done with this bowl. Clean as you go. After you're done cooking, the last thing you want to do is clean, and the only thing that's going to need to be cleaned here is the surface we are working on and the scale. And the last thing you want to do after you cook is clean. So clean as you go. Let the dough chill a little bit. But you can see, so this has been resting for 20 hours. You see how supple and smooth that is compared to that shaggy mess we started with before. And I kind of showed you the kind of that what's called the window pane test to kind of stretch it out so you can see light through it. Well, this dough is very cold, so it's going to be a little tougher to stretch very thin. But I don't know if we can see it here, but as you can see, this dough stretches a lot nicer and smoother. And let's see, let's get it real smooth so you can see my finger wagging through it. It tore right there, but that's all right. Again, if this were like a room temperature dough, this would be a lot easier. It's cold. You know what? This is kind of a bad demonstration of what I'm trying to show. So I'm just going to cut that out. Oh, and this is the beer I'm drinking today. Never had it before. It's tasty. Chuck fire? Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. So this is where your bench scraper is going to come in handy. So zero the scale out, and we're going to cut. Let's see. We're just going to cut rough balls. Don't worry about making them round now. We'll shape them later. 308, a little too heavy. We'll put a little bit off there. 273, still a little bit over. 264, I can live with that. So we'll put that there. We're done with the scale. So now comes the shaping part. So here's what you'll want to do for the shaping part. So if you wanted to make a pizza tonight, you absolutely could. So what you would do, first I'm just going to show you with the first dough ball. You're going to do the same thing for every dough ball. Flatten it out, degas it, and then kind of fold it into itself, because you want to develop some surface tension and kind of form a taut ball. And again, you don't want to add flour to this at all. You want it to stick a little bit. So the technique you can do is you kind of want to take it with one hand. It's a little bigger. You can kind of do it with two hands. But you kind of want to put some surface or put some tension around the outside of the ball and kind of just tighten up. And you can kind of feel the surface. You want to develop surface tension. And that is kind of this part of the dough just kind of, kind of becoming taut. Because for the secondary rise, you kind of want a nice structured rise. And if you wanted, so with the long bulk ferment in the fridge, you've developed quite a lot of flavor. So if you wanted to make a pizza dough, what you could do is take this nice top ball, just a nice tight seam. You can put a little flour down, dust it with flour, put a towel over it, or just, take like an inverted bowl like this. Well, a bigger bowl because it's going to kind of rise and spread out a little. And then you could kind of wait like, say about an hour. And then you could, roll it out, spin it out. I'll get to that in the next video about how to actually, get from a dough ball to, the actual pie. But so I think pizza dough really hits its stride after a couple days in the fridge. So you do the primary ferment at a cold temperature for anywhere from 12 to 36, 48 hours, kind of like I said in the last video. But if you really want to develop a flavor and get a really good dough, it's really, you could put this. So what I'm going to do with all these doughs, I'm going to do this to all of them, and then I'm going to put them in a bag. And I'm going to put one, maybe two in the fridge, and I'm going to leave it for, until I want to make a pizza. You can leave this in the fridge for 5-6 days. Depending on how long it's in the fridge, it gets a little different to work with. Like after 4 or 5 days, it tends to tear a little more. It's kind of almost overproofed and can tear a little more easily. But like 2 to 4 days on the secondary ferment is when it really hits its stride. It hits its stride in terms of flavor and texture. So first, let me just, and also if you have a bench scraper, another way to kind of develop surface tension is kind of push this under and turn it. Or you can kind of just go like that, turn it, go like that, turn it, go like that, turn it. And you don't want to use flour because you kind of want to use the stickiness of the surface to help, develop that surface tension. So you can see right here, it's a nice taut ball. So I'm going to do that for all of these. And again, I'm going to push it down. A little sticky one, huh? And so we're going to do this tight. Kind of just keep folding it in on itself into the middle. You see how I'm doing this? I'm kind of just bringing it into the middle and kind of rough forming it into a ball. That's kind of like the first step in developing the surface tension. And then you turn it over so the seam side is down. And there's a few different ways to develop surface tension. Like you kind of see like here, I'm kind of putting more pressure on my pinkies on the underneath to kind of press down and kind of get it under and develop surface tension. This is a great way to do it. This is a good way to do it. So it's whatever works for you. If it's a wetter dough, I don't know, just figure it out. Just figure it out. I've shown you enough techniques. Whatever gets you the best surface tension on the dough, you'll find your own way and figure it out. So that's another one down. So what's also great about these, and why I usually make multiple at a time, is because once I make all 6 of these, I'm going to put them all in individual Ziploc baggies, and I'm going to put most of them in the freezer because dough freezes so extremely well. And it lasts forever. Putting it in the freezer, it doesn't kill the yeast. It just slows it down to like really a snail's pace. Kind of like how I've talked about putting in the fridge slows the fermentation. Freezer even more so. So make a bunch of this dough. So you only have to make it once, and then when you want to, and these things defrost super well. So if like you wanted to make a dough tonight and you had frozen dough, if you just take it out of the freezer in the bag, leave it out on the counter, it'll defrost totally fine in 1 hour. If you want to defrost really quick, you would want to put it on like an aluminum sheet tray, just because aluminum is really great at pulling the hot or the cold out of things. It's what's the word for it? Well, it transfers temperature very well. Gets hot quick, gets cold quick, sucks the temperature out of things really quick. But ideally, if you have one of these in the freezer, and let's say you're making pizza in a couple days or the next day, take it out of the freezer, put it in the fridge, and then the next day, about an hour before you want to make the dough, take it out of the fridge. It'll be perfectly thawed, and make your pizza from there. But the ideal dough is going to be when you take it from here, bag it up, put it in the fridge for a day, 2 days, and then make your pizza from there. I mean, you can roll it out cold, you can roll it out when it's room temperature. I kind of like to take the chill off a little bit, but I don't like it at complete room temperature. And sometimes you want to roll the dough out, which I kind of recommend for beginners, and it kind of depends what kind of pizza you're making. Like if you're making like kind of a Chicago style cracker crust, which I will do a video on, you're gonna want it a little bit. You're gonna want to roll it out just because there's additional steps to follow. But if you're making more of like a New York style pizza, or you want to impress someone by the old school tossing the pizza up, working it with your knuckles, which is super impressive, that's kind of how you do it. But so look at these. Look at my 4 tot balls. Don't they look pretty? And you can see how soft and smooth that skin got over time. And that's just the yeast working on the dough, or the yeast and it's just the yeast working on the dough. It's the flour being fully hydrated. It's the gluten structure. Makes a very smooth dough. And so again, here I am folding it over itself, kind of beginning the stages of working that surface tension into it. Get that seam on the bottom, flip it over. And get that surface tension. Make it nice and taut. This technique that I was doing on the first dough, this is kind of what I would do if I was making like a pita bread or a naan, because you're working with smaller dough balls and it just kind of fits in your hand nicely. I mean, I can still do it with this, but I kind of prefer to do it like this with bigger dough balls. So there's number 5. And see how there's no sticking. Again, that comes down to kind of working. Like if you were just lackadaisical and were like, and just kind of like picking up the dough, like it would be difficult to work with. Like I've said it a few times, you want to be assertive, you want to be confident, but you want to be gentle at the same time. It's like making love. You want to be gentle, but there's times where you like getting your hair pulled a little. So I've done a few different techniques of developing the surface tension for this dough. And so I've mentioned secondary fermentation a couple times. That's what's about to go down. Like I said earlier, if you wanted to have pizza in an hour, first of all, turn the oven on right now. Make sure you have a baking stone, a steel, or you could do it in a cast iron. I won't do a video on that because a baking stone, a baking steel, they're not um, too expensive and they really serve a lot of utility. And if you're watching a video that goes this deep into dough, then I'm willing to bet you're willing to make the investment in a steel. But for making pizzas or most breads in general, steel is the way to go. So yeah, 6 top balls. Now we bag them up. So I mean, really, if you have the freezer space and the freezer space, you can make so much of these because you don't just have to make, you don't just have to make pizza with these. You can roll it out, you can fry it in like a cast iron pan or on a flat top. You can just, sometimes if I let this sit in the fridge for too long, I mean, once it gets mold on it after like, I don't know, a week, and it smells weird and it looks weird, maybe just throw it out. But sometimes when dough is like about to go bad, I'll just kind of take it out, just brush it with olive oil, throw some aromatics on there, and just kind of throw it in the oven and just kind of just eat it as is. But I mean, it's a pizza dough, but it's an all-purpose dough that, I mean, really, it's a palette. You can do whatever the fuck you want with it. So that will end this portion. I am going to put 5 of these in the freezer for whenever I want pizza dough in the future. And this one's going to go in the fridge where I'm going to let it sit for 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 days until I want to make pizza. And then the next video that I will make will be how to make, probably be more of just kind of like my kind of pizza, which is just, it's kind of just like a New York pizza kind of combined with the Chicago tavern style cracker crust pizza. Just kind of like if I were to make a pizza, the one that I would make most of the time is what I will make for the next video. So I will see you whenever I decide to make pizza next. Remember, this will go in the fridge, and this can be in the fridge for until it looks weird and smells bad, which 7 days, 8 days. But I mean, when things are leavened with sourdough starter, they just have a much longer shelf life, so you can get away with this. But even honestly, the same process would kind of apply if you use if you use just like instant yeast instead. Like kind of like explained in the last video, just a quarter teaspoon of yeast will do the exact same thing as this, but use the sourdough starter. You get a little bit longer of a shelf life. You get a little more tang and flavor, and I mean, it's just fun to put sourdough Joe to use. So it's been fun. Until next time.